Hi families, we made it through another week. It's finally Friday, and I have another story for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed our shared reading last night, and that was a little bit of a different format, but maybe with watching how we do that in the classroom from time to time, that may also help you as you help your children learn to read their fluency readers after you practice all of those reading skills through phonics. Is a great way to help them with their independent reading at home. So tonight we're going to kind of flip back to a read aloud, and I've got my hair pulled back because the wind is really bad in our backyard this afternoon. It's also pretty hot today, so hopefully we'll be able to get through this read aloud without too much sweating and too much wind. So I have one more story for you that has to do with the sun and the moon. Actually, this one more pertains to the sun today because we're finishing up this first week of our space exploration. We've learned about 3 celestial bodies, the things that help us learn things about nighttime and daytime. And we've learned that the sun is in the center of our solar system. We've learned that the Earth orbits around the sun, and we've also learned that there is a moon that orbits around the Earth. So it's pretty interesting that all of these different bodies are moving at the same time, and when they move in their orbit they create a pattern, and that pattern is called day and night. And I'm going to bring up our Venn diagram in just a moment, but I wanted to let you know that I didn't have any more comments last night on what we know or what we've learned. So we're going to keep our anchor chart up, but I don't really have anything new to add to it. And let's see if there was anything else I needed to tell you. I think the last pickup for computers was today. And if you need any additional packets, they're outside in front of our school for you to pick up at your leisure. So let's go ahead and get started. And you may hear some sounds from my neighborhood because some of our neighbors are doing spring cleaning and mowing their yards and things like that. So our book today is called Moonbear's Shadow, and the author is Frank Ash. So there's our character today. He looks really happy to be outside. And if you notice, it's sunny. The spring butterflies are out. The cattails are blooming in the spring, in the stream there, along with the tulip, and the clouds are nice and fluffy and happy. So let's begin. Moonbear's Shadow. And if you look in the beginning of this book, it has some interesting pictures of a tree, and it looks like possibly the moon. We'll have to read to find out. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not just about the sun. One day, Bear went down to the pond with his fishing pole and a big can of worms. While he was putting a worm on his hook, he looked down and saw a big fish. "I'm gonna catch that fish," thought Bear to himself. We go fishing, but we actually use crickets, not worms. But when Bear stood up to throw his line in the water, his shadow got scared. His shadow scared the big fish away. "Go away, Shadow," cried Bear. But the bear's shadow wouldn't go away. "Okay," said Bear, "if you won't go on your own, then I'll just have to get rid of you." And he put down his fishing pole and began to run. He ran around the pond, and when he got to the other side, he just kept running. Oh, here he is. See, he's running with his shadow. He ran through a field of flowers and jumped over the brook and hid behind a tree. "Whew, good," thought Bear. "No shadow can find me." But Bear was wrong. When he stepped out from behind the tree, the first thing he saw was his shadow. Nearby was a cliff. Bear walked over to the cliff and looked up. "I'll climb so high that the shadow won't be able to follow me." Bear climbed higher and higher until at last he pulled himself up to the top. Huffing and puffing, he smiled with pride. Then he looked down and saw Shadow. After all that hard work, and it won't leave him alone. Now Bear was very annoyed, so he went home and got a hammer and some nails to nail his shadow to the ground. He hammered and hammered and hammered, but no matter what and how many nails he hammered, he couldn't nail his shadow down. This part of the book reminds me of another story I've heard. If you've ever listened to the story of Peter Pan, he tries to glue his shadow back on. If I can't nail him down, thought Bear, maybe I can bury him. So he got his shovel and dug a hole. When the hole was deep and wide, he let his shadow fall into the hole. This is my favorite illustration. See, here's Bear, his shadow, and the hole that he dug is here. So his shadow is falling into the hole. It's pretty thoughtful, I thought, of Bear. Then Bear filled in the hole with dirt. When he was finished, it was almost noon. The sun was so high in the sky, and a shadow was nowhere to be seen. Whew, at last, sighed the Bear. No more shadow. See how the moon is directly above the bear? I think we've read another story this week where the sun was directly on top of the little girl in sun up and sun down, and she noticed the same thing. There was no shadow at noon. I wonder if that has to do with something about the position of the sun in the sky. But now Bear was very tired, so he went inside and took just a little nap. While he slept, time passed, and the sun once again began casting shadows. So here's noon. This is probably 12:30, maybe 1 o'clock, closer to 2 or 3. It's starting to become afternoon now, not midday. When Bear got up and opened his door, he saw his shadow on the floor. "Not you again," exclaimed Bear, and he slammed the door, hoping to lock the shadow inside. But Shadow was too quick. Here he is inside, and there's the shadow again outside his door. He can't get away. Sighed Bear. "How about this? If you let me catch a fish, I'll let you catch one too. Nod your head if it's a deal." So when Bear nodded his head, Shadow nodded too. So Bear went back to the pond and once again threw his line in the water. By this time, the sun was in a different part of the sky, which made it very easy for Shadow to keep his part of the deal. So now the sun has changed positions and his shadow has changed positions also. I notice in this picture, the sun is over here on your left or your right, and it's shining down on Bear, creating the shadows next door to him or beside him. That's a good word, instead of next door. And when Bear caught that big fish, Shadow caught one too. I love this book so much. It's a little predictable, which means that you probably know what's going to happen next. But I love that it shows us the different positions of the sun during the day. And I also really enjoy the fact that Bear is such a fun character. I can kind of see myself following my shadow around every once in a while too. It's a fun game to play. I do have a little craft activity for you to do with your family. Maybe not today because it's getting later in the evening and it's time for dinner, I'm sure, at your house. But possibly one day this weekend, you just simply take a piece of white paper or notebook paper. It could be the kind with lines on it. It doesn't have to be plain. And I want you to choose your favorite figure. So it could be a animal figure like a giraffe or an elephant. It could be your favorite Barbie figure. It could be your favorite Transformer. Or if you really like Lego guys, I know we have a lot of those little Lego people in our house. What you do is you take it outside and you place it on the piece of paper and it will create a shadow. So as long as it's not lunchtime at noon, the shadow will reflect onto your paper, and then you can trace the shadow of your figure and create your own piece of artwork, and we're going to call that our shadow art. So if you create a piece of shadow art this weekend, I want you to share it to our dojo, and I will collect those pictures and hopefully be able to share them out with the class maybe over the next couple of days. So again, the directions are pretty simple. You just take a piece of paper, some type of figure like an animal or a Transformer or a Barbie. You place that onto the piece of paper and it should show a shadow if it's not directly 12 o'clock in the daytime at noon. It should cast a shadow to the left or the right. It could also be behind the figure or beside it based on where the sun is in the sky. So I just wanted to recap some of the things we've learned this week. We learned that the sun heats the earth, and we also learned that if someone wants to become a scientist and watch the stars and the planets from far away, they have to use something called a telescope. We learned that stars are really far distances away, so we can't touch them, we can't pull them down, we can't catch a star like the little boy did earlier this week. And we also learned that in the daytime we can see the sun, but not at night, because the sun actually stays in one place and the earth turns away from it. So when the sun is not facing, or the earth is not facing the sun, then it creates a pattern of day and night. Last thing I want to share with you is our circle diagram. It's called a Venn diagram. We talked about the sun and the moon all week, and we added different information each day. And we said that the sun is 93 million miles away. We said that it's made of gas. We also said that the sun heats the earth. We learned that moons have phases as they turn and orbit. The shape of the moon is not changing. It's just how the light hits the moon that changes its shape to our eyes. And then we learned that both the sun and the moon are in the solar system, and I'm going to name that solar system. We learned that that solar system is called the Milky Way. And one more thing I learned about the moon is that it's made of rock. All right, so that completes our first week of space. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the patterns that day and night create, as well as the sun and the moon. And our book is going to be a book that we read over several days. It's called Sunshine's Make the Seasons. And we're going to enjoy that book for a couple of days, and then we will get back to some new things. In the future, we'll talk about plants and different things before we come back together, hopefully before the school year ends. So, hope you have a great night. I want to see some of that shadow art, and I hope that you have a really great weekend. Have a good night.